Vertigo Nation, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Sean, and you are listening to Vertigo for the hardcore. That's right. We've rebranded. It's still Vertigo. It's just a little different, you know? A little more flavor, a little more salt, a little more pepper, you know? Chef's kiss. You got it. Thank you for joining me. If you're new here, go ahead and take a second now and hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you be a regular listener. I do upload podcasts weekly, so you'll be getting content fresh. So yeah, got a good episode coming up today. Going to be talking about what's on my playlist. That'll come later. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about this week is my personal need to just try and control outcomes and how exhausting that is. One of the things I was thinking about is, I'm constantly feeling tired, and I thought that it was probably from not getting enough sleep. I've got a really wonky work schedule. I start work at 4:30 in the morning, so I'm up between 3 and 3:15 if I'm not hitting the snooze button. Brush my teeth, throw on my work uniform, cup of coffee, roll out, and then I work 4:30 to 3. And that's so 50 hours a week. And so I always thought like maybe I'm just tired because, my work schedule is what it is, And then I don't know. I don't know if it's intuition, just emotional intelligence, I don't know. But I started thinking more, or maybe I've started counseling too. But maybe it's really my need to control. I started thinking about this. Every aspect. Now, I don't try to necessarily control people. I try to control outcomes, I noticed. And it's almost like obsessive compulsive disorder, I guess, in a sense. And it probably could be that. I don't know. There's so many flavors, right? I mean, there's the ADHD. There's probably some OCD perfectionism sprinkled in there. And then I know I'm a child of an alcoholic. I grew up in a family with trauma. And even visiting CPTSD, which is complex, complex, whatever, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But you throw the C in the beginning of it, and it just completely fucks my brain. I don't know why. One letter, and my brain just goes freeze. What did you say? CPTSD? What? But it's complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I want to be fair and say this is all just self-reflection. None of this has come as a diagnosis, except for PTSD. I have been diagnosed by a doctor with PTSD, but nothing else that I've talked about other than the perfectionism. I did have a therapist tell me that they thought that it was pretty apparent that I suffer from perfectionism. Well, I don't know what gives them that idea, but I have gone down these deep dives. Now, I don't necessarily believe in self-diagnosis. I think that can be a slippery slope. However, I also believe that there is a lot of information, especially with the dawn of the internet, and whether it's bots or not that's feeding it to me, it's coming from what it seems as good, websites. SAMHSA, for example. What's the other one that Mayo Clinic, so we know that these are sound, we know they're real places, they're sound places, they're evidence-based places, so it's good information. So I feel like at least, it's not fucking TikTok or Facebook that's telling me, right? I mean, it's coming from an actual source that you can, whatever, doesn't fucking matter. It's still all bots, I'm sure, right? That's talking about the last episode, but anyway, just this need to control, and it gets so exhausting, this need, because it's like you try, and so what I'm learning is about myself is it's coming from this need of making sure I suffer from anxiety, and I suffer, from just, I guess, the the I don't like surprises, you know. I like things to be what they are. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm starting to unbury some of this stuff and realizing that like some of my exhaustion is mental exhaustion, which leads to physical exhaustion, but that it's really coming from this place of needing to control. Like I have to make sure that I can somehow control the outcomes of my day to day. And that's impossible. It's impossible. And so one of the things that I'm really trying to do and that I'm struggling with actually is allowing the day to just unfold and realizing that whatever is in front of me is really all I can deal with. And yeah, and that's a scary thought, I guess, you know. Um but what I'm unburying, and I think because first of all, I guess I should set the stage as saying I've been one of these people in my life who I don't like excuses. And I feel like I try really hard to be accountable for what my own decisions are. I'm also realizing, though, that our past experiences definitely shape how we interact with our world, you know? And so I'm beginning to understand that it's not the excuses to acknowledge how my past has forged my future, if that makes any sense. And acknowledging it isn't creating an excuse as much as it's allowing me to have the ability to see it and then course adjust, right? It's like driving, you know, if you got to pay attention to the road, obviously, when you're driving. And when you're driving, you make minor adjustments all the time. You don't even realize that you're doing it. You know, you're driving along and there's a dog approaching the road, or you're driving along and there's garbage in the road, or you're the person in front of you is, you know, whatever, you know. And so you're making adjustments. And I started to realize that, you know, addressing my past and addressing my past traumas specifically helps then to course correct for the future. And I don't want to be that person who needs to just tightly control the outcomes, you know, and I need to let that go somehow. And so that's really what I'm working on, and kind of what I wanted to flesh out on Vertigo in this episode, because I don't think I'm alone in this. And that's the thing, you know, I think that a lot of us struggle. I think that there is a lot of us who are, I think there's a few of us who are good at communicating. It's funny, I was talking with a buddy at work, and he's, you know, close to the same age as I am. And I definitely know that this person has personal struggles. I mean, we all do, but I know that this person has some significant personal struggles in front of them. And they'll make comments about it, but they won't ever really just open the floodgates. And I realize in 2026 that there is much, as far as we've come talking about mental health, and as far as we've come to allowing people to have a voice and to talk about their stuff, it is still difficult for men, specifically, I think, in my age group and older, to really feel like there's a safe environment for us. At least that's what I experience and witness. And I think that there's still some stigma to men who talk about their feelings and talk about mental health specifically and talk about struggles, especially in my age group. Because I've noticed it. Like I know, right? And I think most of us do. I know who the people are who I can be a little bit more candid and open with, and who I just kind of have a surfacey, maybe um, relationship with, you know. We don't ever really get too deep beyond like, hey, how's the fam? How's the kids? Whatever, you know. We don't really talk about like the meat and potatoes of what's going on, you know. And I want Vertigo to challenge that, but I also realize that in order for Vertigo to challenge that, I need to challenge it in my personal relationships with people, and that's really difficult to do. So I guess what I'm saying is as I'm doing a lot of this work, it still feels kind of lonely doing it because I really don't know who wants to hear it. I guess I don't know. You know, there's I still struggle. That's I guess really what I'm trying to spit out is, you know, as I'm doing this work now at 50 years old, it feels freeing on one hand because I'm able to recognize that there's things that I really do need to change and want to change, but then also how difficult it is to do that. And what makes it even more difficult at times is there's not a lot of people that I feel safe, you know, just talking about it. And that can create that can be different. I mean, even being vulnerable on here on Vertigo, you know, I guess part of me is like the people who are listening because they do feel some connection to it and they identify with it and I love that. I'm hoping that Vertigo is a safe space for you because Vertigo is a safe space for me. Um but I also realize that really if we really want to do this work, we've got to figure out some way to talk about it in our natural world and that's difficult, you know. Like I said, I already feel like it's really hard to just have relationships with other men in my age group at least. I have found younger guys. There are younger guys who are much more open to talking about, you know, feelings and struggles and mental health. And I give so much kudos to those guys because they're bucking the trend and I think that's incredible. But I think it's also fair to acknowledge that there's still an age group that struggles with that and I'm in it, you know. And so my peers um you know, this is kind of sad too. I thought about this, and this is going to be the 100% disclosure, honest Vertigo episode, I guess, because I'm a little embarrassed by this. But there are groups of people in my age group, in my community, who don't know that I podcast and who don't know that I do Vertigo. Isn't that crazy when you really think about it? Because it would mean that I would have to open up and be vulnerable in a different way. I mean, if they find it by accident, there's no, you know, I mean, I am putting myself out there and I completely understand that people are going to find Vertigo and I want them to. I want them to. I want this thing to just be not necessarily huge in the aspect of numbers, but impactful. I want it to be impactful. I desire it to be impactful. I also acknowledge the fact that I've got a long way to go because I don't have the self confidence. It's crazy that I do this week to week because the truth of the matter is, I really don't have a lot of self confidence. And that's really embarrassing to admit on this video in front of X amount of people who are watching it, you know, and the numbers keep continue to just grow and it's so incredible and validating. And yet at the same time, I have to force myself to not withdraw because there's a part of me that's like, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I'm constantly critiquing myself, constantly, you know, it's just fucking wild. I'm constantly in my head, constantly up here, constantly. And I look forward to the day where maybe that's less. I don't know, you know, but I'm trying to relinquish that control. Vertigo is part of relinquishing that control in that essence, right? Because I'm putting this out there, knowing that I'm putting it out there, and knowing that people are going to be watching it, and I can't control that, which is pretty wild, right? But I have to feed that artistic side anyway. But yeah, so I found a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. This time, not AI generated, although I still do like what the bots give me. Um, you know, the need for to control everything. So this is going to be the AI overview, just so you know. But I always Google these topics before I crack the mic, right? And it says it's usually a deep survival response driven by anxiety, past chaos, or fear of uncertainty. And I 100% agree with all of that because I can identify all of that in my life, and that is absolutely true. One of the things, so then I went on this article by Psych Central, and it talks about 5 reasons that people typically have the feeling or desire or need to control. Traumatic event, obviously, right? Childhood experiences, that's a no-brainer. Anxiety disorders and obsessive compulsive disorder, which goes along with perfectionism. Personality disorders, not necessarily like multiple personality disorder, but borderline personality disorder, which is actually quite common. And when I worked in the drug and alcohol field, we saw quite a few people with borderline personality disorder and learned behaviors, of course, right? But what I really loved and what I really want to kind of focus in on is how breaking those habits. And this is what's helped for me. So if anybody is listening and is like, yeah, I struggle with that too. I feel that, I'm exhausted. I'm always trying to control my environment. I'm always trying to control these outcomes. I'm always trying to do this. I try to control how I look to other people, and instead it's like, what is that called? Imposter syndrome, right? And I've done episodes on all of this stuff, but all of a sudden it's starting to really come together for me. And I'm beginning to understand how the imposter syndrome feeds the need to control, which then feeds the need for, and how all these things go click. It's like a transformer, when they're coming out of the car phase or the truck phase or the plane, whatever, pick your favorite transformer. Most people like Bumblebee or Optimus Prime. Funny story. My son had pajamas. You say pajamas, I say pajamas. You say tomato, I say tomato. What's that song? Does anybody know that song that I'm talking about? You say tomato, I say. It's an old song. Like I heard it on my grandparents. I think it's been a minute, man. Oh shit, I digressed. I was doing so good. I think this goes for the record for the longest monologue of staying on topic in Vertigo history. If this was a video game, I think I'd get some kind of fucking badge for that, right? And I completely have lost. Oh, how do we break the feeling or desire of needing to control everything? The power of 3s, man. So listen to this. I discovered this completely by accident, and it works. And it goes a little bit like this. So when you're stuck in what I call the mind loop, right? And the anxiety, whatever it is, when you're stuck in that loop, you do these things like, let me try to find 3 green things, or let me try to listen to 3 different songs, 3 different bands. Let me see if I can find 3 round objects. Let me see if because what it does is it breaks the mental monotony, the mental loop. It's about coming in and breaking, because it's for me at least, it's like an OCD loop, right? Obsessive compulsive disorder. It's on this loop and so in order to kind of break the focus or break the brain's looping, you kind of have to come in. Let me find 3 yellow objects, right? And then your focus becomes, and then what happens is you become obsessed with finding, well, I found 3. Here's my personality, right? I found 3. Why couldn't I find 6 yellow objects? And if I find 6 yellow objects, I bet you I can find 10 yellow objects. And then it's just a whole different mental health game, which is fine because that's what creates the next episode for Vertigo, right? So, I mean, I could be mentally fucked all day and Vertigo will just keep going. Holy shit. Yeah, so trying to break, that need for control and trying to address those issues is kind of like what's been really on my mind. And, and sharing this stuff, with the hopes of creating community, right? We can have a safe space where we can comment and talk about and whatnot. but also, I really hope, what my real hope is that by me coming on here and admitting some of this stuff, that maybe we can then start to say, like, I struggle with that too. And how do I have more meaningful relationships too? Because I feel like it's impossible to have meaningful relationships when you're constantly putting roadblocks in front of yourself because you're trying to control these outcomes, right? So wild, fucking wild. So yeah, I don't have all the answers. Like I've said several times, I don't have any letters after my name. I'm just a dude on a microphone. But these are the things that I struggle with, and I don't know if it's important to recognize what the past traumas are. Like I don't know if it's like, hi, I'm Sean, and I have experienced this or I've experienced that, or if it's just a fact to say I've experienced trauma, however that looks. You know, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear comments from y'all though. I would love to hear people's opinions and what's worked and what hasn't worked and what struggles. Like let's talk about this stuff. Like what struggles have you had? I always told you merch was coming on past episodes, and I haven't been very good. I really need to get some of these Vertigo hats so that people can y'all really need to get these into production so that people can purchase them if they want. Any people who lost my mic. Hello? 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 Oh, there we go. All right, we're back. Anybody who what was I gonna say? Need the need for blah blah blah. Virgo hats. Man, I don't remember. Fuck it. Who cares anyway? What's on my playlist, man? This has been a great week for music for me. First of all, I have discovered this artist named Tim Montana, who interestingly enough, I guess is considered a country artist. However, the albums that I've been listening to are not country. They're hard rock, in my opinion. But I love it. Like he's really good. It's like it's weird. It's almost like the what I was talking about in the last episode. I think I referenced talking about the Magnificent Others, which is a podcast with Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins, and how he said that he felt that rock music was going to have a resurgence. And then I listened to this Tim Montana album, and I would have to agree. I really think that this kind of maybe country is going to be the saving grace for rock and roll. I don't know, because like I said, it's weird. At least in Apple Music, I don't know about Spotify and whatnot, because I actually have a paid account for Apple Music. I only have a free account for Spotify. But one of the things that I noticed with Tim Montana, and I'm pretty sure Spotify and all of those, I know Pandora, whatever, they give you suggested artists. And for Tim Montana, the suggested artists are all like Hardy, Morgan Wallen, Luke Combs, Cody Jinks. So clearly country artists, But like I said, the album, and I'm going to look up the name of the album actually right now, so that I can give it all to you. But yeah, the interesting thing to me is that he is not country music, in my opinion. I mean, it's clearly a rock and roll album. So let me find Tim Montana, which won't be too hard because he's right on top of my list. Entire State of Tim Montana. It was released, real recent, July 31st. I didn't even realize that. So this album was just released July 31st. It was released of 2026. The Entire State of Tim Montana. The album is great in my opinion. It's a rocker. It's a rockin' album. I referenced the song All For You by Atreyu on here. It's not, yeah, I would say it's in that musical style, that kind of hard rock. He doesn't do a lot of the screaming. He's a singer for sure. But it's weird too. I feel like a lot of new music has the extreme vocals in it. Like all bands kind of have gone the way of having some screaming or whatever, even like Poppy, and it's just weird, they've all kind of adapted, that extreme vocal style. It's kind of weird. There's not a lot of just straight singing anymore. You don't get just clean vocals, as the kids say. You get a lot of whatever. I've digressed. Really, I haven't digressed. I lose my place because I just go on these tangents and my mind is spinning faster. Vertigo, baby. Hey, have you subscribed yet? Are you subscribed to this podcast? Because I guarantee, first of all, Vertigo is the podcast that will make your head spin. So why not subscribe? So yeah, anyway, Tim Montana. The second thing that's been on my playlist. Oh, I got to take a quick. So I was listening to a classic rock radio station here in Central New York. I listen to TK99. I like it on like Saturday mornings to just put it on, and you listen to that Journey, Bad Company, of course, Led Zeppelin. But what's really interesting now is that music that I have grown up listening to that were new artists are now classic rock. For example, I'm listening to TK99 this morning and Dave Matthews, who debuted in like 1990, dude. At least that nationally, right? I'm sure he was playing around in Virginia long before that, but didn't really break until the 90s nationally on radio or, whatever. And that dude is being played on classic rock radio. And I had to stop for a minute and be like, what? Dave Matthews is on. When did Dave Matthews become classic rock? It's fucking wild, man. It's weird when you experience this circle, and now I'm starting to understand perspective a little bit differently. Like I can't, so when I was growing up and I was listening to say Styx or Kansas and they were being played on classic rock radio, which is really weird that in the 80s, bands that were only a decade prior, the 70s, were considered classic rock. Like, how does that work? Because now, Motley Crue, Bon Jovi, I guess Dave Matthews, but Bon Jovi and is clearly older than Dave Matthews. But anyway, yeah, all these bands are being played on classic rock radio now. It's so wild to me. It's so wild to me. I don't know. It trips me up. Like, I don't even know what to say about it, to be honest with you, man. It just fucking trips me out, man. It's fucking wild. But anyway, Tim Montana definitely is a great listen, and the entire state, and the album before that, which I can look up real quick, actually, because he's probably still open on my phone, yeah. Savage is the album before that. That was released in 2024. I haven't listened. I got to be complete, full disclosure, transparency, whatever. I haven't listened to any other albums. Yeah, other than those two. I was trying to think if I did, and I didn't. I listened to just those two. So the entire state of Tim Montana and Savage, those two albums from him, I've listened to. They're rock albums. I don't care what anybody says. I don't hear country in that at all. Give it a listen. I'm up for a great debate on it, but I'm not hearing any country. I'm hearing rock and roll. I mean, and good rock too. I mean, like he's definitely good, And then next, one of my favorite bands, and will always be one of my favorite bands, Five Finger Death Punch. I have listened to them since War is the Answer, which was their first album. I love Five Finger Death Punch. And to me, they're like that perfect blend of punchy hard rock metal with some really great pop hooks, And I know that Five Finger Death Punch is one of those bands where people love them or hate them. They're kind of like Nickelback, I guess. I don't understand what the shade is about Nickelback either, the hate around Nickelback. I mean, some of their songs are a little cringy, but, they've got millions of fans. I don't know. So how can they, it's weird. I always think, like, how can they be notoriously the most hated band and then also sell out concerts and stadiums? Like that to me, that blows my mind too. You want to talk? We should do an episode of Vertigo, like things that blow Sean's mind. And nothing about it is really super complicated because my mind is pretty simple actually. So like Nickelback being the most hated band in the world, but yet selling out stadiums, to me, I'm like, how does that work? So secretly the people that hate them are actually buying their tickets. That's right. I mean, that's what it has to be, right? And Five Finger Death Punch, same thing, selling out stadiums all over the world, and yet people are like, oh, they suck. Really? They suck? That's interesting. I can say a lot of things about bands that I hate, right? Saying that a band sucks per se, though, is like one of those things that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You don't, you might not like them because of, whatever, you don't like the music, you don't like the songs, you don't like the singer, you don't like the whatever, the guitar, whatever. But to say that a band who is selling nationally sucks, it's like, they had enough talent to make it. I don't know. They captured lightning in a bottle? Maybe. I mean, there are definitely bands that aren't as talented, right? I mean, I think it's fair to say that the musicianship behind maybe Mark Hoppus of Blink 182 isn't the same as John Entwistle from, The Who. But it doesn't mean that Blink sucks, I don't know. I always like the underdogs anyway. So, but anyway, so Five Finger Death Punch, they released an album called Legacy. And I'm really digging that album as well. So I have played the shit out of both Five Finger Death Punch, specifically the album Legacy, but it also brought me back to looking back in their catalog and listening to other stuff. Like I was listening to War is the Answer actually at work the other day, which is one of I think that's the second. Yeah, so there's The Way of the Fist, which is the first album by Five Finger Death Punch, which is a great album that's got Bleeding on it, and one of my favorite Five Finger songs. And then their second album is War is the Answer. That's when they had the breakout hit with the cover of Bad Company. And then they just took off from there. And then I think they had hit singles from every album thereafter. So, but Legacy is an incredible album. It really is. I really am enjoying it. So that's really what's on my playlist. It's been Tim Montana and Five Finger Death Punch. And then of course, I sprinkle some of the other stuff in there. Like I still am listening to Dayseeker a little bit. I've still been listening to Nocturnal Affair, which I was on my playlist last episode. So I'm still, listening to them. Has anybody listening to What Is Love by Nocturnal Affair, that cover? That is one of the most fun cover songs that I've heard in a while. What Is Love, which was that, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. Well, they covered it in a rock, and they covered it like seriously too. It wasn't even, in my opinion at least, it wasn't a joke, right? It wasn't like they released it as a joke. They released it seemingly, right, as a serious cover, and they fucking nailed it. It's great. So if you haven't listened to the cover of What Is Love by the Nocturnal Affair, and actually I gotta look up who originally did the song What Is Love, because I feel like it's only appropriate to give the original artist a little bit of love. What Is Love? Haddaway. How could I forget that? Yeah, so when was that song? All right, it's not, it was 1993. 1993, What Is Love by Haddaway came out, who was a Trinidadian German singer. There's a mix, right? Trinidadian and German. Anyway, Haddaway, yeah. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. Like I mean, come on, man. I'm a rocker, dude. And who doesn't, like, you turn that song on and you're like, baby, don't hurt me. Right? I mean, come on. So yeah, kudos to Nocturnal Affair for covering that song, because that song's killer, man. I'm really enjoying it. So there you go. You got to listen to Legacy by and there's a song, man, and that ties in. And I think this is what happens. I tend to have bands on my playlist. I think that reflect the mood I've been in the prior in that week. And so there's a song, and I'm looking it up right now. Five Finger Death Punch, the Legacy album, In Time. It's the 5th track on the album, In Time. Wow. So if anybody's been paying attention, if you listen to specific songs, not necessarily artists or albums, but when I mention a specific song in an episode of what's on my playlist, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. When I give you a specific song, I'm clearly giving you a little insight into my mental health of that week. I talked about specifically the song, I think it's called Wreckage by Pearl Jam, many moons ago, many episodes ago. That's probably a reference to where I was at that point in time. If you want to listen to Oxygen by The Nocturnal Affair, gives you a little insight into where I was emotionally, mentally. And then I'm also admitting that with In Time. And of course, Atreyu. I mentioned Atreyu, all for you, pretty specifically. There's little Easter eggs there. Just saying. If you want to know a little bit about what's going on in Sean's mind in between episodes, what I'm doing during the week, what I'm thinking about, there's Easter eggs there. Just saying. I mean, and it's not important, but it's important, right? Because in the beginning of the episode, I was talking about how, like, it's difficult to be vulnerable, but music is so cathartic and it allows us to be vulnerable. And so when I share a specific song, I'm sharing a little vulnerability. So anyway, I don't know why I felt that was important to say, but I said it, and I'm not editing out. So take it and run with it. Have what you will with it. I'm really enjoying the video. I'm starting to feel a little more relaxed. I'm starting to get into the groove. So I hope y'all are enjoying that. Again, thank you for your continued support. Thank you so much for listening and supporting Vertigo. Still, I don't have any guests lined up at the present time, but that can change at any point in time. Please go back and listen to the Dr. Bagnall episode if you have not listened to it yet. He was an incredible resource, and I really am turned on by the thought of functional neurology, and I'm still actually doing a deep dive, and I'm actually looking for somebody local who might want to come on and compliment Dr. Bagnall's episode, because I feel like that would be pretty cool to have somebody come on locally, local for us. I'm in Central New York, so I got to be careful because Vertigo is all over the world. We've got listeners in Puerto Rico. We've got listeners in Germany. We've got listeners in Canada. We've got listeners all over the place, and I'm very proud of that. So when I say local, this show was started so homegrown. I had 10 listeners and I knew who all 10 of you were. And we were all living in the trenches here in Central New York. And now it's grown beyond that. But for my homegrown peeps who continue to support Vertigo, I'm looking for a complimentary guest who is a doctor of functional neurology, who is also local to the Central New York area. And hopefully, yeah, I don't know. Fuck it. I'm not going to say anything more about it. I'm going to just kind of say right here, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. This is Vertigo for the hardcore, meaning those who are you with me? Is your head spinning? Are you with me? If you are, thank you. Thank you so much for your support. And as always, I hope this episode made your head spin. And Vertigo Nation, do me a favor. Love and support one another, man. There is so much that divides us in this world. I think about this all the time. We're divided on politics. We're divided on the isms, name it, sexism, racism, whatever. There's so much that divides us. But the truth of the matter is we are all people. We are all trying to just navigate and survive in this world, right? So do me a favor, spread a little bit of love, man, and thank you for listening. This is Vertigo, the podcast that will make your head spin. Peace.